सर्वधर्मान् परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज.
The miseries of material existence and the most hopeless conditions of life is the best possible opportunity to turn to God.
Barerupa Bhakti presents The Gift of Desperation, a Bhakti recovery podcast. This is a 12-step based Bhakti-oriented space. Here we share our experience, strength, and hope in the spirit of recovery from addictions and associated behaviors. Welcome. Well, hello. It is Jiva G sitting here with one of the best midwifeys that I know. Her name is Rowan. Hello, Rowan. Welcome.
Hello.
So it's really nice that you said yes to the. I know Rowan through the Bhakti Recovery Group. I love to call her Roro. So Miss Roro is a recovering addict. She is a very, very seasoned midwife. In case anyone is in the Houston area and needs a midwife, hit her up. We'll put those in the show notes. And Rowan has been a very close friend of devotees and a devotee. What do you always call us? You say you're
a lover of devotees.
Yeah, a lover of devotees. So I invited Rowan on because I invited her here because she's just she's a very interesting person and has a very a really great story to tell. So, hey, Rowan, is there anything I missed?
I don't think so.
Okay,
Except that
good.
you are a friend to me too, and that my gift of finding the Bhakti Recovery Group online during COVID was so huge. And like in any 12-step program, there's some people we immediately like totally gravitate towards or get close to and think, oh yeah, this person would have been my friend if I had met him at a party or sat down next to him at a coffee shop. And other people you're like, oh, not so much. And still there to recover, but maybe not
Yeah.
so much. But you and I were like, oh, hi, where you been?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that was great. That was definitely a good connection. So, yeah. And sometimes, I mean, I think now since, the pandemic is over and all that, a lot of people have, gone to have their home meetings at in person, which is also something that we do recommend actually, that, continue going to in-person meetings. But Rowan, so how did you get, let me ask, first of all, where are you from?
I was born in El Paso, Texas, and I'm a border girl. And I've lived in Houston for, I don't know, maybe 30 years, maybe 25 years, Houston, Texas. And I live part-time in the desert too, in Marfa. And I have a family who are all alcoholic or addicts of some sort. And I've always wanted to not be that way. So I adopted straight edge very early, very early. I saw Purcell come through, Purcelli, and Ray come through, Raghunath, and thought, I want to be like this. I want to be straight edge. So when I have actually used alcohol or some other type of medication, to me that feels like an extreme bottom because I made a commitment to never use anything. And so
Right.
I think I've maybe had 5 drinks in my entire life, and each one of them counts, maybe 4, has counted as the extreme bottom because I broke a commitment to myself.
I totally get that. I totally get that. And and that's the thing. This is where I think a lot of people misunderstand. And that's where I really believe that measuring other people with your yardstick is probably the worst thing that you can do to anyone to devalidate their experience in life. I think it's so important that we all, what you're saying when was relevant to me. My bottom line was just a lot lower than yours, but when I hit that bottom line, I knew it was over. So
Hmm.
I get that.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
get that.
And I haven't had that experience of losing my house and my life and been in jail and those types of things, but I sure watch my relatives do that. And I just got
Mm.
back from burying my mother, and I could see the people in my family who had not had a commitment to sobriety. And actually, one of the times that I slipped, I had 6 years sobriety, and it was at a family reunion that,
Oh
like,
yeah.
I had a rum and coke, and that was it. And it just was on from there. So going back to the same realm of family, like just 3 weeks ago, and my mother died in 2016, but she was interred, which means we buried her in the ground with the rest of her family this like 3 weeks ago, beginning of October. And seeing people in my family who still struggle with such rampant drug use or um,
Mm.
an alcohol, and it was wild. And I made sure to get out early. Like I went to the events and then was first person there and first person to leave because I don't want to be that way. But I remember my grandmother falling in the Christmas tree when I was like, I don't know, 7 or 8, and thinking, not me. I'm not going to wipe out the Christmas tree because I'm drunk, like, no. So I'm appreciative and grateful to the lessons I didn't have to learn so grittily, but I made an early commitment to be sober. And when I broke that commitment to myself, that's when I got my butt to AA.
Wow. Okay, so when you came to recovery originally, was it AA, or did you also go to Al-Anon or Alateen or something like that beforehand?
I went to ACA. I went to Adult Children of Alcoholics, which, by the way, will eat your lunch. It's one of the hardest programs I think there is. And I went to that, and then I was going to ACA on the reg for like 3 years because things were rough with my mom, Susan. Uh, and thank you for those, those challenges because it got me here, right? Thank you, Susan. And then I had a migraine, and there was weed in my house, and I smoked some weed and went to an ACA meeting. Can I cuss? Do we cuss on
Of
this one?
course, you can
No.
cuss.
Yeah.
You can
I
cuss.
went to an ACA meeting fucked up, and I thought I made a commitment to never do that. And so then I started going to 12 step, like for sobriety, for alcohol sobriety.
Oh, nice.
And so, because I was already going, I was used to the meeting houses and stuff and used to the format. And then I went through a terrible, terrible emotional breakup. And I didn't care what 12 step it was at that point. I went to any meeting I could get to. It was like, oh, it's a meeting for abstaining from cheese. Fantastic. I'm in, like I don't care what it is. I don't care what kind of meeting it is. There's people in here. They're going to read the same stuff over and over again. It's going to be soothing. Great. I'm not going to act out or, mess my life up any further for like an hour at a time. Fantastic. I'll go.
Hey,
Um,
Roro, you know what? That is so great that you said that. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt your. Did you want
fine.
to finish what you were saying, or is it fine?
That's fine.
Okay. I
Let's
just
go.
wanted to say that this is so, not everybody has that kind of I would say readiness and fervor for the program, like saying like, I don't give a shit what program this is. I'm going to go to one because 12 steps are the 12 steps. And no matter what you say, no matter what we identify with, if it's being an addict, an alcoholic, or an ACA, or a CODA, or
Hmm.
overeaters and whatever it is, it's all
Hmm.
kind of the same message. And that's kind of why I created the Buck to Recovery group. And I think that's why you liked it so much when you came in, because it was really just that
Yeah,
all inclusive,
and it was really unfiltered.
ready to listen to
When
the
I
message of recovery.
Right. When I first started going to 12, like I'm a queer woman in Houston, like, and I was in like not in proper Houston, which is a little bit more accepting. So this was like 95 that I was going to AA and ACA meetings, and everybody was chain smoking and like they were farty old boat people and stuff. And like I don't have anything in common with those
Party
people.
on boat.
And like rednecky and stuff. And like, when people think of Texas, that's how they were. And chain smoking and drinking coffee and I had to play the pronoun game. Like I wasn't safe being out, but whatever. I was doing introspection to figure out more of who I was so that I wouldn't chase medication away from my feelings. And
Right.
and I don't care what that package looks like, the inside was good and I needed that to grow myself as a person. I have a commitment to be this close to divine spirit. I'm crossing my fingers to be like intertwined with divine spirit and to be a conduit for healing arts. And I recognize early, like if you want to, I'm fluent in woo, by the way. So that and woo woo. So like I recognize that there was an energetic charge to 12 step that would help me be a better healing arts practitioner and be a better conduit for good and to be a helper. And even though I'm
Do you
not
know,
Christian, what?
can you explain what woo woo is?
Yeah, woo-woo is like when people like have this idea like that astrology or tarot cards or energy transfer through Reiki or even acupuncture, whatever, that can be considered like maybe not science based, which I disagree. We just haven't figured out some of the science and why this stuff works yet. But it can seem like mystical and magical and woo-woo and stuff. But I'm fluent in woo and science. Like, I'm gonna do the vaccines and I'm gonna take the homeopathy, okay? I'm gonna do all the stuff and be well versed in both of it. So um I know my anatomy and I know the energetic ley lines and like of the body. Like I got it. So but I recognize the energetic charge of 12 step very early on. And yeah, it's wrapped up in Christianity, or it was at the time, but like whatever, I can transcend it and I can still learn and grow and I can find a teacher anywhere. And I recognize that 12 step was a teacher. Okay. And it was, I was broke as shit. So I had, here's my dollar. Okay. I'm gonna sit here and
When it was a bad
I'll
meeting, you're like, I want my dollar back. No, I'm kidding.
but I also figured out that I like to do hand projects like embroidery or whatever. So even if the meeting sucked, I would be like, I'm just gonna sit here and crochet another line or knit another, washcloth or whatever. So I'm gonna stay busy, and I found value everywhere. And even this guy named Ernest, he was in a meeting one time. He said when people start talking, sometimes he prays for them and he says, "Please God, let this motherfucker shut up." And I was like, "Okay, this is me, like here's a perfect example of who I don't want to be." Okay,
Mm,
that's still a lesson and a teacher. So when I found Bhakti, a friend had mentioned the Wisdom of the Sages podcast, and then they said also there's a 12 step you might be interested, and this was like deep in pandemic times, and I'm working at a Medicaid birth center. Things are wild. We can't figure out where the COVID's coming from. I'm having people come in who are absolutely not low risk, which is what midwifery is, but they're on Medicaid and they're black. And should I send them to hospital? Like, I don't know. And hospitals are famous for institutional racism and undersupporting our darker complected birthing folks. So I was like in the
probably especially
trenches.
more in Texas, right? I mean,
Yeah, it was
or
bad.
is
So
that just like a generalization on my part?
no, no, no. Texas is grim. I think we're 48th in mortality, infant mortality and morbidity, and which is terrible. Like Texas is a big state, and actually Texas has more birth centers than any other state, and so that's our goal is with our birth centers to do better with the mortality and morbidity rate. But a black birthing person in the U.S. is 7 times more likely to have a near miss with their death for either the birthing parent or a near miss for the infant, or they do die. So 7 times, like even
Oh my God.
Serena Williams had a blood clot and they ignored her. So it's grim. So I'm under high
It's
stakes pressure.
it's really hard for me to get my head around that. Like I can't, I don't even, I, I it's like as a white-bodied person, I just don't, I mean, I've encountered lots of, I would say, bias
Hmm.
and bigotry on
Hmm.
my part. Like people won't touch me if you find out you're an ex-junkie. They don't want to touch you. They don't want to take your blood. They treat you like shit.
Hmm.
Um, but just for the tone of your skin, I mean, I just couldn't understand. I just don't understand that. Like it doesn't compute in my head. But facts are
No, it's
facts,
terrible.
you know.
And it's called institutional racism. And like even the tests that have been run, and like the thresholds for different tests. that relate to when you have a baby, those have been done on pale people like me. And so each kind of culture has, or ethnic background has a different biome based on like the foods you eat or your DNA and stuff like that. And um, anyway, for all this testing to be done on white people and then that to be the standard is not cool. So anyway, I'm like busting ass working at this Medicaid birth center. Some people are coming in after having exactly one prenatal visit and because they didn't have enough money for gas because they're not working because it's COVID. And I'm like, okay. And when my friend mentioned the the group starting, I was like, okay, here we go. Because I wasn't going to meetings in person. I was just going to work, wearing masks, having air filters everywhere. And so I made a lot of missteps, I think, when I first joined the Bhakti group. Like I didn't know the Maha Mantra. Um, but what I say is I've been to a million Christian AA meetings, and hopefully I'll do a million Krishna AA meetings or 12 step, 12 step work. And I found devotees to be very loving and very service oriented and very compassionate and very forgiving and very interested in general in self-reflection and doing better. And I thought, here are my people.
Mm.
Here are my people.
Wow. So how was that with when you when you decided to be a midwife,
Hmm.
were you in recovery already or were you not in
Hmm.
recovery? You were in recovery.
I
So when
wanted
did you, all right, go ahead.
I
Sorry.
wanted to be a midwife. I read some postpartum instructions that my mom had when she came home from having my sister in 1975 or 6 or whatever. So I read it when I was 11. So that I must have been 1982. I was born in 71. And I thought, I want to do this. I want to be involved in birth and not a doctor or a nurse. What is this? But this is late 80s at this point by the time I figured out the word was midwife. And it wasn't real clear how to become a midwife. And so then I met some midwives and they're like, listen, you're not going to have your own kids because I was committed to, like, I don't need to have children. Like, it's fine. I'm one of those people that perfectly fine not having kids, birthing children. And so they're like, you're never going to birth your own children. And also, you're gay. Nobody will want you down there. So you cannot be successful as a midwife. So we want you to go be a
Who said
massage
this?
therapist. Other midwives. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. So what happened, that was in
Ugh.
1994, 93, 94. So I became a massage therapist. They told me to do that. And I was like, I'm not going to touch people for money. That's gross. And they're like, do it. I'm like, okay. So I became a massage therapist and I'm still a massage therapist. That's a massage table behind me. And my
Oh
skill
man,
of
I'm
being
coming
able to,
over. I'm coming over.
my ability to figure and sense with my hands just from years and years of touching people is phenomenal. So when I translate, oh, and being super consent based. So early in my prenatal massage career, folks were like, hey, I have a scar from a surgical birth. So I started working on those, a C-section. And then folks were actually, well, the scars are lower because routine episiotomies were the thing at the time. And so, because I wasn't afraid to navigate tenderly somebody else's vulva, I just threw on some gloves and started doing scar remediation on the pelvic floor. And I have a very kind and compassionate touch and a very loving and compassionate, like think about when people get exams or any type of obstetrical stuff, there's a lot of violence. And I have the opposite
Oh
approach.
yeah.
Like we're consent based, we're together, we're a team. And that's where the healing happens, not when you're just trying to grit through it, but when you feel connected to the practitioner and not in a sexual way, but in a trusting way. Our hearts are working together as a team to heal this body way. And so then
That's
I have,
beautiful.
well, but I'm working outside of my scope of practice as a massage therapist. So then when I was 45, I was like, you know what? I can be 50 and a midwife or 50 and not a midwife. So I just went for it.
Yes. Good for you. Oh my
And then I
God.
got licensed right before COVID. So January 2019, I became licensed. I started working at this birth center. And then when January of 20 or March of 20 happened, wild times, but I was ready to go.
Wow.
Hmm. Yeah. So, and through all that, like I can remember being at the birth center in the middle of the night And then Wisdom of the Sages podcast would come on, which is 4 a.m. and I'd watch that, and I remember like checking fetal heart tones and like watching seeing what, doing the, like listening to whatever the teaching was that day. So Wisdom of the Sages and also BRG, Bhakti Recovery Group, really kept my sobriety when I was like in the trenches being a medical provider and serving people that are just chronically underserved and under supported and under listened to and all that. And I remember, like, I have my own beads there, in a shelter bag. What's the bag called that you put your beads in? The japa beads?
The Joppa
They have the
bag.
name? Yeah, japa
It's
bag.
just a
Okay, my japa
Joppa
bag.
bag.
Yeah, my japa bag has the wheel with the flames on it from the shelter logo and
Oh, you got
stuff.
the shelter one.
Yeah, I
Ooh,
did.
that's a
I did. I
collector's
know.
item.
I know. I know. And I'm not gonna lie, a lot of times I was like on there seeing like to see what Purcelli was doing, or Parmananda on the BRG. I'm like, oh look, he's sweeping, or not on BRG, on Wisdom of the Sages. Like, look, this
Yeah.
man sweeps and puts the dustpan back. This is great. So good.
That's so funny.
You're like, oh, so and so has a new coffee maker because Wisdom of the Sages is all these different, like, it's Zoom, right? And
Yeah.
then it was nice to do that with Bhakti Recovery Group too, to see all the people, like so and so is like in a cockpit pilot, because he's a pilot or whatever, he's in a plane, and then somebody else is walking in nature in Germany. Like the
Isn't it funny?
connectedness. Yeah, the connectedness of BRG. Somebody's on a train and the internet sucks. Okay. Um, all these different time zones and people and all like loving Krishna and wanting to be self-reflective, like that's gold right there. Anybody who's listening to this, I want you to come to BRG, in addition to whatever other practice you have, either spiritually or like as a recovery and having your home group or whatever. But BRG, like, I hope to never stop. And I'm only making it to like one meeting a month, and it's often the Tuesday one, and they're like, Rowan, this is a men's meeting. I'm like, oh shit, sorry. So,
I identify it. No, I'm on gender.
well, and I am non-binary, but also I don't struggle with sex addiction, so I'm not like, I don't need to
Yeah.
crash their stuff. Hey fellas, what's the problem here? Be up in their
Actually,
grill. And
I would bet, except for maybe the more conservative ones, but I would bet that 70% of the guys would be okay being there. I would bet it. I would bet it.
Of all the trials and tribulations I have, sexual addiction is not one of them, or porn or anything. Like, I missed that one. Let me
Me
knock on
too. I missed
wood.
that one.
Well,
I totally missed that one. I'm
which I think
glad.
is great.
Me too. Me too. Me too.
I got enough worried about. Yeah. Yeah. I do want to say that when I was in Michigan at my mom's thing, I know there's a couple of tells that I have before I'm fixing to make a poor choice. And my sister knows them too. So I was sitting with my sister in a restaurant in Michigan. It was Sunday, and we were fixing to fly back Monday. The funeral had been Saturday, with more going through pictures and stuff at my family's house on Sunday. And my sister has a service dog, so I was sitting with the dog, and somebody walked by, and it was like some type of fancy drink in that like martini looking glass, and the rim was glowing on the rim of the drink. And when it has that kind of shimmer to it that's so enticing and alluring, that's when I know I'm about 4 steps from making a bad choice. So I just grabbed the dog
Mm.
and told my sister I have to go. And then right at that time, the waitress comes up, and like I'm in a booth, and she's like leaning into the booth because we're friendly and stuff. And I was like, I have got to get out of here right now. And she was like, oh, are you okay? And I was like, I'm an addict and those drinks look interesting and I have to go. And she like hopped out of the way, and I just went to the car and sat there like kind of shaky and upset. So I want to say
Mm.
that knowing not the point when you pick up the drink or the heroin or the Skittles bag or whatever it is that you're not doing, but knowing 5 steps or 4 steps before that, and having a quick exit, and not thinking I can battle through this, or I'm going to look embarrassed or whatever. Like, I don't care, because I would rather get out now than have to clean up the big mess that is for sure going to happen if I stay.
That's that's a great story. Thank you for sharing that. So what do you owe that to, that kind of thinking? What is it that you think got you there to get to the point of
Mm,
where you are able to have a choice and make a decision before the shit hits the
mm,
fan?
mhm, mhm. I think one time when I went back out, the last time I think, last time, next to last time, they had something in common. Um, the last time I went back out, I planned it. And the time before that, it was spontaneous. And but they both had that luminescent quality
Hmm.
that like was so alluring and so attractive and like pulling me in and like kind of when you see like on cheesy movies or whatever, like, the devil is luring you in and it's all shiny and magical.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that. And so those two experiences having that same kind of vibe to it, noticing when I like fool me once, fool me twice, right? But a third time, like no way. So recognizing that that was the energetic signature, it would be the woo term, the energetic signature of the bad decision fixing to happen. And knowing like when I see that, just get out of there. Just get out of there. I'm trusting that my training in 12 step or my education and self-reflection in 12 step and also Krishna and the Christian God, whomever is looking out for me right this moment, that they're letting me know and for me to be aware of that sign or symptom or that energetic signature and to get out.
So you think
So,
like I think that that's a really good summary of it. So you think, and because I always viewed as a recovery as sort of like, showing up to meetings and doing the things that were suggested in the program are the things that it's like investing in the bank of recovery. So each time we
mhm,
do that, we're investing and we're investing. And then the times where we're not able to deal with things like an emergency situation, we get to withdraw from the bank of investment that we've
mhm,
invested. We have the strength to get the hell out the Dodge before things get crazy, you know?
yeah. Before I'm like, whatever, I'm just gonna drink too.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, 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 no. No. I hopefully love myself enough to not, and sometimes I don't want to say people who slip or whatever don't love themselves, but I can't. I'm not coming back. I don't have it coming back in me. This is it.
I
So
get
like
that.
the worst movie in my the worst like or the most depressing or the movie scene that breaks my heart the most, and I was talking to another addict about this not long ago, is from A Star Is Born,
Mm-hmm.
where the main character that he's gone through recovery and he's sitting there and he's waiting for his girlfriend or his wife or whatever, and that manager's like, "You're not shit. You're not shit. You're holding her back and all this stuff," and the in insensitive and the like getting in the mind and reinforcing that we're less than, and then he goes on to make a poor choice. That's like the most horrifying scene of any movie I've ever seen because I know that that could be me, somebody saying that
Mm.
stuff to me or whatever, and I'm going to be more susceptible to that. um like I just don't have it in me to go back out and come back in.
And I think that that's an interesting point because I think often people don't quite understand that what you put in is what you get out. And if we're not willing to do the work or,
Hmm.
to invest um, in our program, in our recovery, and what I love about your recovery is that you're like all inclusive, period. It's like your recovery is even non-binary. It's like
Right.
it's like I'm not AA, I'm not NA, I'm like all of it, like
Sign me up.
yeah, it's because you're seriously looking at the message of recovery. And I think there's a certain amount of spiritual maturity that one must
Mm,
have in order to not identify with the material quote unquote problem,
hmm.
the challenge, because all that is a mask for what's really going on. And like you said, it doesn't matter if it's, a drug or a drink or a Skittles bag or whatever it is that you're not doing. The
Hmm.
message of recovery is what's attractive. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we gotta know inside ourselves too that if we go back out or slip or make a poor choice, like, can you get back in these doors? Because that whole phrase about my addiction is out there in the driveway doing push-ups. No shit,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, yeah.
No shit. So I'm not gonna, if I can any way, shape, or form avoid something, I'm not gonna assume that I can make it back through the doors of recovery.
Right.
Like that's not a thing. I don't think I can do it. And like when my mom died and like my whole life like kind of fell apart. My mom died and then my husband left me and like the dog died. It was rough. I made my midwifery educator promise me that if I drank, she would fire me from the program,
Oh
from
wow.
midwifery education. And she goes, "No, Rowan, I think it'll be okay." I was like, "If I drink, I'm out."
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, so I put in like bumper, like when you're bowling, I put in bumpers to help me stay on the narrow. I was like,
It's
because Rowan, you
good.
can't lose midwifery. You can't lose all these other things that you're working so hard on. Like, forget it, man. We've come too far. Yeah.
I think that's really good. I think that's yeah. It's like I said, there's a certain amount. I mean, I understand perhaps when somebody's coming fresh off the streets, freshly, a real, real bad
Mm-hmm.
alcoholic or a real bad junkie, like
Mm-hmm.
something really extreme. Of course, there are extreme things that probably Recovery 2.0, as far as, you know, what you're talking about and what I'm talking about, that's something that's far away. I mean, I know for me it was very far away. My level of success was being abstinent from drugs and alcohol. Everything else was fair game. I didn't give a shit. You
Yeah.
know, I was I didn't care. My breakfast was a quadruple espresso with 6 almond like, what do you call them? Almond joys crushed into it,
Yeah.
and like a pound. There weren't Red Bulls, but if there were, I would have pounded them down, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
that kind of thing, and illicit sex, all of it. I didn't care. It
Yeah.
wasn't.
Yeah.
It
Sure.
wasn't like I didn't care, and it wasn't like I wasn't doing. I had not even inkling that this stuff was. This was a step up. This is what I mean. This was a step up for me. It was like, I don't care,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. I get it. I get it. And I want to be clear in this podcast that my relatively benign lows, from the outside, because for me, having a betrayal to myself is the lowest low. But yeah, I'm not living on the streets or whatever, so it could look like a benign low, and we're not going to compare ourselves. And just because,
No,
like, I'm all like, I can't go back out or whatever, I won't come back in. Like, my story is not anybody else's story. Like, we're all just
exactly.
gonna do our best and show up and be helpers, and mostly helpers to ourselves, for real. So,
Totally, totally. And
but
and
not
and this is
not comparing. Yeah.
no, and this is what I appreciate about you, because
Hmm.
what I wanted to actually say at the end of that is that, my floor, my bottom is someone else's ceiling and the other way around,
Right. Right. Totally.
and it's like, I know people have sunk a million times lower than I. The elevator always goes down, but it depends on, how we're born. I mean, what we believe in Krishna consciousness is, karma
Hmm.
and dharma and all kinds of things that play a part in who we are and what body we're born into and what karma we have. And,
Hmm.
and whatever that is, it is specially designed for each person. There is no, well, I can do it, that means you can do it. Or if, like, oh, I didn't do that, so that means I'm not, I didn't do that, what
Mm-mm.
they did. So no, no, it's just not like that. That's why
Mm-mm.
that's why it's so important to have that intelligence, as Prabhupada would say it. I don't mean as we
Mhm.
understand it here, but I mean that
Mhm.
emotional intelligence to know that when Rowan says her bottom, you, for example, is going against something that I said I would never do and doing that, that's the absolute bottom line for you.
Mhm.
And you can see that that's true because your actions
Mhm.
show that as soon as that happens, you're in the solution because you're afraid, like
Mhm.
we all are, because we don't want to go
Mhm.
there again. We don't want to go there again.
Mm-mm. And I want to say too that like when I came back from that family reunion and I had slipped, like I was working EMS at the time, so I got picked up and I had some like guy that I hated was my partner and like I'd never met him before. His name was Felix. And he gets in the unit with me and he goes, "So, I heard you in the program." I was like, "What?" He goes, "I heard you're in the program." I'm like, "Who told you that?" And he goes, "Somebody else at the station." I was like, "You motherfuckers." And then I was like, "Yeah, I actually slipped this weekend." And he goes, "Well, I'm in the program too, so I guess I know what we're doing today." So we got out, like you had to call. There was no like cell phone at the time, or it wasn't like we have now. And I just went to meeting after meeting wearing my EMS uniform. And Felix sat out in the unit with the radio, and if we got a call, he would hit the siren, and I would come out and we would go to a call all day. I did a 24-hour shift. I think I did 6 meetings that day. So, like, Felix, this guy that I hated with a capital H, was like, okay, we're just gonna go to meeting after meeting after meeting. And he was like 19 or something. He couldn't drive, and I'm like, I'm already in my 30s. And so we're just going from meeting to meeting, and he's like hanging out in the unit with the radio in case we get a call, hitting the siren, and then I come out
Oh
of the
my
building
God. I love
w
that story. I never heard that from you.
wearing my EMS uniform. Yes,
Oh my
there
God,
we
that's so
go.
funny.
So I think when we make mistakes or we slip or whatever, that there's a solution brought to us, kind of like, a tree that poisons you also has a solution, like with
Hmm.
plants and stuff, herbology. That's kind of what this guy, Felix, man, this guy was terrible. He was so terrible. Like he was just like a terrible person in general. But he was in the program. He was 19. He'd already had 2 years of sobriety. I had 6 when I slipped at that family reunion. And so then I just went to meeting after meeting after meeting. So I came back from that, hit embrace sobriety again, and I don't even remember what those meetings were. And they were all parts of town I never have been to, but I showed up. So we've got to accept a solution when it's brought to us by divine source, by Krishna, by the Christian God, like whatever. But where the
Right.
solution is, let's embrace it and let's move forward to it and not say, well, I don't really like this guy Felix, so I'm not going to do fuck all what he says. It's like, oh. And the bonus was when I was in the meeting, I was not in the unit with Felix. So, okay.
But that's right there, living proof, principles before personalities.
Yeah, right. And when I slipped 3 times, every time it's 6 years. So, that's why when I got to the
Oh,
6 year
that's
part,
interesting.
yeah. So when I was trying to make that jump from 6 to 7, my whole world was blown apart. That's when my mom died. That's when Trey left me. That's when the dog died. Like that's when everything was terrible. So I would stand and I was moving. So I would stand up at a meeting and I was like, okay, I need help moving today. And people were like, okay, I got a truck. I'll come over. So I was like, great. And then when I was like really like when my husband told me he was having an affair, I had like passed out from emotional pain. And then I woke up thinking, I need a beer, I need a beer, I need a beer, I need a beer, I need a beer. And so I texted this guy who was always, I would go to 6:30 a.m. meeting. And so this guy was always on his phone. So I texted this guy at like 6 a.m. and I was like, hey, if I want to have a beer, I can, right? And Harold was like, just go ahead and meet me at the Denny's. And so then
I
like
remember
five
this story.
people,
I remember this story, but
yeah.
please tell it to everyone. Go ahead.
Okay, so then like a bunch of people show up at this Denny's, and I'm in so much emotional pain I can barely drive. And when my husband had told me he was leaving me and he was having an affair, I was in my Airstream and I passed out, and then we decided to go back to his house because we were trying to reconcile. And then he goes, "I'm gonna walk the dog around the block." And when he came back, I was like, "There's alcohol in this house," and he goes, "Well, what do you want me to do? Just throw it away?" And I was like, "Okay." So I went home to my sister's house where the Airstream was, and my sister looked at me and she goes, "What's wrong?" And I was like, I want a drink." And she goes, "Go to the Airstream." So she made my brother-in-law come home. I think they had some random stuff, and so she made my brother-in-law come home from work and throw it all away. And there's the contrast between a family who supports an addict and understands, and my ex-husband who was like, "What do you want me to do? Throw this alcohol away? Like I'm not gonna waste it." So the next morning I woke
Wow.
up, yeah. And the next morning I woke up, I was like, I'm gonna drink, I'm gonna drink. Harold goes, meet me at the Denny's. A bunch of people I don't really know were at the Denny's. Okay, great. They were there. And then from there I went and bought some Rescue Remedy, which is a type of Bach flower remedy from
Yeah,
CVS,
we
which
have
is a
that.
store. Yeah, okay.
It's a very German thing.
Yeah, Bach flower remedies. I'm just eating them, just like, pins at a time. And because I have got to not, I have to back away from the edge. And so from there, I went to a hoop making workshop because I'm a hoop instructor. So I'm making hoops and crying. And then from
A
there,
hula hoop instructor?
oh yeah, I'm a hoop instructor. Punk rock
Like
hoops.
hula
What's
hoop?
up?
Like
Punk rock
hula
hoops.
hula hoop?
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't
Because
know there was.
most people who hoop are have a lot of natural ability, and I do not. So when I teach classes, I get a hoop that is too small because most people can't hoop because they take a hoop that's too small. So
Oh,
you have because they're trying to hoop with a kid size hoop, like, and that might work if you're a small person like 5 feet, but not if you're a larger body person. So I have adult size hoops, but I when I teach in public, I get a hoop that's too small. And so people are like, oh, look at that teacher. She's kind of fat and she's not very good. So then they feel encouraged to come to my class, which is great. And I can break down moves for anybody. Like I'm a good hoop instructor. But anyway, Punk Rock Hoops is our business name. Shout out to my hoopers. But from there, I went to a hoop making workshop, and then we went and worked on my mom's house because she just died, right? And so somebody was with me the whole time. And then I realized I did not make poor choices because I had somebody with me. Okay. So the next morning, 6:30 a.m., I'm like, hey, everybody, my mom has died, my husband has left me, and I am going to slip. So I got out my
what year was
planner,
this? What year was this?
2016. It was August
Okay.
of 2016. It
Okay.
was around my birthday, yeah. And for about 6 weeks, I carried around a planner, and people would take hour and a half to 2 hour chunks and sit with me or be with me. So friends would go with me to my dead mom's house to go through stuff. Other people would just come and be with me in the Airstream. They would meet me at a coffee shop. I was at like 2 to 3 meetings a day, but I had
Did you ever have trouble or challenges asking for help?
no, because I was gonna I was gonna die.
Okay,
That
good.
was my option. I
Good.
was gonna die
Good.
or get help. That
Okay,
was it.
great.
And
Perfect.
nothing, short of inpatient, right? And so, and I was still working, seeing people. So, and like my midwifery instructors, they were like, okay, you're with us right now. And they were like cold, unfeeling people who like don't have a lot of bandwidth. They're autistic and like just not very developed, but whatever. When
Which
I'm
is
with them, I'm not,
strange, which is very strange for someone who wants to be a midwife, right?
well, they're great midwives. They're like, okay, this is what's happening. It's like, great.
Okay.
Um, um, But when I was with them, I wasn't going to make a poor choice because I was being supervised and I was engaged and I was learning. And also, I knew if I acted up, I was going to lose that program. So,
Mm.
and I just remember like I have my paper planner and I would cross stuff, and my patients, they would come to the door and I'd be like crying and they're like, it's okay, Rowan, you're with us right now. I'm like, okay, okay, great. That's the type of practitioner I was, that I was very transparent. And they were like, that's okay. You're going to help me heal and I'm going to be with you. I'm like, okay. My hands are shaking as I'm doing my body. Um, just very compassionate. And then there's this guy in my AA. Well, one time I remember I was walking past the smoking section at the Lambda Center, which is where I go to my home group, Lambda Center, shout out, Houston. And this guy goes like, "Hey, I got Wednesdays at 3 open." And I was like, "Okay, do you need help?" And he goes, "No, you need help." And I was like, "Okay, Wednesdays at 3, let me write it down in my book." I don't even know this guy. He just heard me say it one day. And then there's a guy in my meetings that I see all the time. We go to all the same meetings and stuff, and we loathe each other. His name is Paul. And Paul, if you're hearing this, it's okay because we know it and we say it to each other all the time. And Paul's probably on podcast saying how much he hates Rowan. That's fine. And Paul came up to me and he goes, "So Saturday, no, he goes Fridays from like 7:30 to 9 or something like that, 7 to 10." I was like, "What?" Crabby. He goes, "I'm gonna do."
3 whole hours with you.
Well, I didn't understand what he was saying at first. He goes, we're gonna do this meeting and then we're gonna go to coffee or cake or whatever. He goes, and he even says something shitty like, you probably like cake, because I've got a big body, just like he's an asshole. He's like a really mean gay man who like didn't know he was gay. Like he told me he came out and I was like, he goes, yeah,
To
I came
who? To
out.
yourself?
That's what I said. I was like, as what? And he goes, I came out to the group. I was like, as what? And he goes, gay. I was like, what? Why else would you come here? Like, well, I told everybody because it's close to my job. And I was like, Paul, nobody believed that, okay? Look at your socks. So anyway, like we bring out the worst in each other. We're very 14 to each other. It's terrible. And so he goes, we're just gonna be together and we're gonna do this meeting and then we're gonna go eat, because I know you want to eat. And I was like, screw you, dude. And then
Yes.
and I just said, like, look, Paul, I don't even have a lot of resources financially right now. And he was like, no, I got a job, it's fine. I was like, okay. So me and Paul for 6 weeks, right? This is the level of my commitment. Ugh. And it's interesting, I saw Paul about 2 years ago. And because all that happened in 2016, right? So maybe it was a year ago. I saw Paul at a coffee shop, and it was kind of dark. We were on a patio, and he goes, "Hey, Rowan, I don't know if you remember me." And I was like, "Paul, come on. How would I not know who you are? How would I forget?" And he hugged me, and I hugged him because that's what we do, because we love each other, even though we don't like each other. And
That's so
that's the
fucking
level of AA and 12
funny.
step and all that Paul was like, "All right, this is my shift," like just sucking it up. Okay, is what we got to do. There used to be this show called Northern Exposure. Do you remember that? Northern Exposure?
From name, I do. What was it again
Okay.
about?
It was about this town, Sicily, Alaska, and there was a doctor. Dr. Joel Fleshman had been like sent there, right? And so at one
Yes.
point, somebody gets sick, and somebody asks Joel or whatever, they're like, "Well, you didn't sign up for your shift." And he goes, "What?" And it's like, "Well, yeah, we're all signing up for shift, and you haven't signed up for yours yet. So, like, what's the deal here?" Because everybody took shifts to be with this person who was sick, and that's how I felt. Um, that I was sick and everybody signed up for a shift. And I have certainly signed up for shifts with other people, and I will continue to do that. And that's what they did for me. So,
That's so cool. I love that story. And what so
uh,
much to learn from that story. So much to learn from that story. And this is what I love. This is what I learned about AA. In the devotee world, we have a lot of that never, devotee aparat, never, you shouldn't offend any devotees. You should only speak well about them. You should never speak poorly about another devotee.
mhm,
And I have trouble. I struggle with that. What I don't struggle with is showing love, even if I don't like you.
mhm, mhm,
And, and that's what I love about AA, because people, even though they don't like each other, they'll still be vulnerable and they're still in a safe space. And you don't get that anywhere. You don't get that in the
mhm,
devotee world. I don't get that anywhere. I get that only in AA. That's the only place I've ever experienced that. Exactly your story. I've lived it. I've seen it. I've done it. I've witnessed it. It's amazing.
mhm,
So any
mhm,
devotee listening to this, and I think a lot of devotees, see, this is the thing, AA and 12-step program and bhakti yoga are essentially very, very similar in so very many ways. And AA will show you how to walk that walk,
mhm,
you know.
mhm. Here's something. So when I accepted my 7-year chip, like a bunch of my friends and family came. I think that's maybe the second chip I've ever like gone to a chip meeting or whatever, and it's a big speaker meeting. And so we each just like, or not speaker, but you accept your chip, say your thing, whatever. And I go to the Lambda Center in Houston, which is gay AA, and so I was with 7 years, and so I went up there, all butch, wearing my black tank top, with the ribbed ones that we formerly called wife beaters, but now we don't call them that because that's not a good thing to say. But I'm up
I
there
still
wearing
call them
my
wife beaters. I still call them wife beaters. Is that not politically correct anymore?
Well, like it's promoting domestic violence, so like I gotta, but I'm there in my black jeans, Chucks, and black beater, right? I'm just about as lesbian as you can be. And I brought my planner up and I said, "Hey everybody, I want to tell you how to go from 6 to 7." And so, and I said, "This has been the hardest year of
Mm.
my life. I've slipped twice before at 6, and to make it to 7 on this third time is a miracle." And I held up my plan. I was like, "This is how I did it." And I said about, blocking out hour and a half times or whatever. And I was crying, I was shaking, I was holding on to the podium. And then the next day, somebody called me and they're like, "Hey, I'm pregnant and I want you to be my midwife."
Oh,
And they're like, "That's the midwife I want. Someone like
that's
that."
beautiful. Beautiful.
And
You're the kind
that's
of midwife I
community
would want
midwifery.
too. I wish you
Oh
were
yeah.
there. I wish I knew you when I had both my kids.
It's community midwifery. Like I'm a person
Mm,
of support in the community, but also like I'm imperfect and the people that are in my care know that. They
mm.
know that. So,
But this is what I love. And I also love your vulnerability, and I love you're very wry, and you can be in your humors, especially, you're just especially, sometimes you're very dry humor, and I love it. I just love your humor, and you also have such a nice, there's a lot of stuff to appreciate about you, Roro. And
thank you.
you're always I always loved when you came to meetings more often. I know now life has changed and everything, and you don't come as often, but
Hmm.
I'd love to have you way more often. Um,
I always feel
yeah,
so much better when I see you. I'm like, or and you, Jiva, and the devotees and stuff, and I always feel such a sense of like, okay, and even a bad meeting, I'm better off than I was before. That's my advice. Come to meetings, have a hand project. When somebody says something terrible or you don't agree with, just focus on your hand project. Because we take what we need, leave the rest. I didn't need that. I really wish that guy would shut up. I don't want to hear about that for the seventh day in a row. Whatever. Figure that shit out. Okay, okay, but keep working on your hand project. Keep your mouth
that's
shut,
it.
and just we're just here holding space together and being a place of self-reflection. I mean, that's what's up.
Absolutely. I thank you so much also for your vulnerability and your story. And actually, I'd love to do an episode with you just about midwifery. I
Sure,
think a lot of people would be very interested in that,
sure.
especially now because, like, right now, for me, the hottest topic is menopause. And I know that midwife, that's not your specialty, but there's
That's
a
not
lot
true.
of
That's not
like,
true. There
oh,
overlap because as a midwife, we take care of reproduction. So like anywhere from like puberty to reproduction and then beyond. So I'm menopausal. I'm
wow.
postmenopausal. I'm menopaused early.
Yeah, me too. Yeah,
And
me too. Postmenopausal.
right, yeah. And then my sister is changing my sister's a therapist. We practice together. And my sister is changing her focus from perinatal care to menopausal care. And she even has like a monthly meetup on Zoom for like, because she's a therapist. So they talk about something therapeutic. And I'll send you a link or I'll send it to anybody else who's listening. And my sister also embraces recovery, not to the level that I do, but she's sober and abstinent and stuff. It goes to Al-Anon meetings. When I was going to all those meetings, people would come with me. My sister certainly put in the time. But menopause is a big,
Wow.
so because it's the inverse of puberty, and some parts are great,
Totally.
and some parts are terrible, and some of it we have to recalibrate to a new normal, and then this whole um, women are treated as their only value is how much they reproduce. And as somebody who's never wanted to have children and hasn't birthed any children, I certainly have children from marriage, which I love my kids, but like I didn't need to be a parent to be fulfilled as a person. And people who also share that sentiment are super undervalued or like treated as if
Oh,
all sorts of
absolutely.
stuff. And
I
then at
actually really
menopause,
appreciate people who decide not to have children. I appreciate it so much. I really do.
right,
Like, I extra appreciate it because
yeah,
how many people have children and don't really want them because they feel like they should, because society
right.
says you should, or these people say you should reproduce, you should, and there's a certain amount of pressure on them to do it. The best thing
Mm-mm.
you can do if you don't really truly want to have children is not to have children, you
Right.
know?
And back to that, if it's not a hell yes, then it's a no. If having children is not a hell yes, then it's a no. Be the best aunt you could ever be. Be the librarian, be the neighborhood lady who makes cookies.
Totally,
Like,
totally, totally.
yeah. No, no. So menopause, I know a fair amount about it. It is a passion of mine, and that's one of the services I offer is menopause massage, midlife, midwife. And no, we can talk about it. I love it. And my sister would probably be a good interview person too, because she's all about menopause
Let's,
and she embraces
okay,
recovery.
okay. Can we do, when we get off this call, I would like to arrange with you and your sister a
Hmm.
special episode about menopause.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Menopause. Oh my God. And then we'll bring that also into recovery and stuff because I can tell you menopause was the worst years of my life. I've never experienced such horrible, horrible. And the thing is, there is here in Germany, there is zero knowledge from doctors about menopause. And if there is some knowledge, it is brushed under the carpet. From all the doctors, what I've heard is, oh yeah, that's just what happens. And when I hear that, I want to jump over the table and choke them with their stethoscopes. It's like
roundhouse kick. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. When I hear that, I'm like, oh, that's what you have to say? Is that your medical opinion or is that your stupid personal opinion? There's just not enough knowledge. And for something that harsh, I mean, for me, it was harsh. Menopause was not kind to me, not kind at all. I think every symptom that you can possibly have, physical, mental, emotional, I got it, all of it. And I was chucked from doctor to doctor, and not any one doctor told me that it was menopause. Not even.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
They said, oh, it's fibromyalgia. Oh, it's in your head. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. Oh, it's your thyroid. Oh, it's this. And then, I just, after years and years of going back and forth, I decided to go on estrogen and some progesterone. And I feel like born again. I feel like a totally different person. And it took years to find that out. Years. Anyway.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother
I
episode.
want to say, yeah, and I'm on a discovery journey with it myself too, but having, that's how I got here. I did tell somebody that, I was telling my kids actually, that when I first started body work, I was the worst person in the class. In 1994, I was the bottom of the class, people, bottom of the class. But before Will Smith acted up, he had this famous phrase of, he's not afraid to die on the treadmill. He's not afraid to just keep learning and stay in it longer and have an open mind and a relentless spirit. And this is me with menopause. That's how I was with body work. That's how I am with midwifery. That's how I am with reproductive care. And the other things I write about. And then also that's how I am with menopause. I'm just going to keep learning until we figure most of the stuff out, and then I'll share it as I can. So I would love to get on there with you and Blythe. Yeah.
I love that. Okay. So Rowie, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure. In an hour from now, there's a meeting, an hour and 10 minutes if you want to come.
Okay. Thanks for that public push. Okay.
You heard that, everyone. Rowan's coming to a meeting in an hour and 10 minutes.
That's right. See you.
All right, my darling. I'm going to stop recording but stay on. Okay.
Got it.
Great ball, everyone. Thanks, Ro. This concludes another episode. Thanks for listening. In order for me to serve this community to the best of my ability, I welcome feedback. Please write your feedback at bhaktirecoverypodcast@gmail.com. That's bhaktirecoverypodcast@gmail.com. Also, please don't forget to follow and give us a 5-star rating. Share this with family and friends. If you'd like to join our Bhakti Recovery community or just find out what we're all about, please visit our website at www.bhaktirecoverygroup.com. That's www.bhaktirecoverygroup.com. There are no dues or fees, and we meet daily. If you or someone you know is struggling with addictions and/or associated behaviors, you will find links in our show notes to various 12-step programs. Nobody seeking recovery need ever be alone again.
सर्वधर्मान् परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज.
The miseries of material existence and the most hopeless conditions of life is the best possible opportunity to turn to God.